One thing that I always try and emphasize whenever talking about my experiences in prison is that I didn't serve time at just one place. I was at a half dozen different prisons and probably a dozen different yards within those prisons. Primarily, the reason for this is that my custody level kept dropping. I started at a very secure facility with a lot of violence, but as I didn't get into trouble, my custody level slowly dropped and they moved me to less and less secure facilities. Over the course of 17 years, I saw a lot of changes within CDCR. Heck, even the name CDCR, the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, that R they added in 2005 or so. Originally it was just CDC. I wanted to spend a couple of moments talking about two of the big changes that occurred around the time that I was starting my sentence. One is weights, the weight pile out there on the yard. Every prison yard had a stack of about 500 pounds of plates, the big circular weights and bars to lift them with. And every ethnic group or prison gang would take turns going out to that weight pile and just hitting it like savages. I've talked about the mandatory workout before. Whenever I was doing my time, mandatory workout was primarily burpees. You went out, you and your acquaintances, you did a squat, you did a push-up, you stood up, they did a squat and a push-up, that's called a burpee, and you went back and forth, just forever, hundreds of them. Before they took the weights, it was all about the resistance training, about bench pressing 500 pounds and turning into a 300-pound solid muscle beast of a man. Understandably, the CCPOA got tired of this. The justification for taking the weights had been that the plates could be used as weapons, that somebody might attack somebody else with a weight. But being as how the most secure yards even still had things like baseball bats and horseshoes that were available for inmates to use, it seems unrealistic that that's the real reason they were taken. In my opinion, the officers just got fed up with having to do cell extractions of two inmates who were 300 pounds of muscle and who were bench pressing all of the weight they could find every single day. Of course, the absence of weights didn't make it so that the inmates stopped working out. They found clever ways to replicate the resistance. For instance, you might take a towel and hold it in two hands and pull up while your friend pulled down as hard as he could. As a result, you'd get, an easy 100 pounds of pressure trying to pull up on it and working your muscles. And inmates are very inventive for finding ways to work every muscle group with no equipment or minimal equipment. I had actually thought they were going to reintroduce the weights whenever Governor Schwarzenegger took office. You see, whenever he had been Mr. Universe, he had actually went to a number of California prisons and given speeches about how important he considered bodybuilding to be to the rehabilitation of inmates. He had said publicly and repeatedly that the discipline required in order to build muscle and to lift weights was the same type of discipline that would be used to develop a good life once an inmate was released. Unfortunately, he did not reintroduce the weights to the system. I imagine it was a politically dangerous move. If something unfortunate had happened, if a weight had been used as a weapon, it would have looked poorly upon him, and there was no upside. It's not like anybody but inmates cared about this. Another big change that took place around this time period was the prohibition on tobacco products. Suddenly you couldn't buy cigarettes or chewing tobacco or anything of that nature. It was contraband in CDC. This took place in a year whenever the budget was particularly tight in California. And the justification was that the amount of money spent treating tobacco-related illnesses in prisons, emphysema, lung cancer, heart disease, that type of thing, exceeded the amount of money that could possibly be made from selling tobacco products, so they were going to be prohibited. This was a very big deal because just everybody smoked in CDC. I think literally 19 out of 20 inmates smoked at least occasionally. Even myself, and I was never a smoker in my life, I found myself smoking probably a cigarette a day just as a social mechanism whenever I was talking to other inmates and I was offered a cigarette. This created a situation where a black market sprung up. You see, an unopened package of cigarettes was going for $50 on the yard. And generally, what inmates previously had wanted officers to smuggle in is drugs. Officers don't want to smuggle in drugs because they understand the consequences are harsh for smuggling drugs into a prison. It's quite reasonable for somebody to go from guarding the cells to living inside of the cells in a very short period of time if he's caught smuggling drugs into a prison. But tobacco, on the other hand, well, that's not even illegal. It's a rules violation instead of a law broken for an officer to bring tobacco products into a prison. And at $50 a pack, an officer could easily double or even triple his wage just bringing a couple of packs every time he came into the prison and selling them. This had the slippery slope effect of getting a lot more officers involved in contraband smuggling, because you never stop with tobacco. Of course, once you start bringing in the pack of cigarettes, the gang is going to lean on you a little bit, point out how much more money you could make, possibly threaten to inform on you for what you have done, or in extreme cases, maybe even threaten your family. Once they have that leverage on you because they're so desperate to get things like drugs into the prison, they're going to keep pushing. This situation was further exacerbated by cell phones. You see, an officer could bring a cell phone into the institution and easily sell it for a couple $100, maybe even $1,000 in the right circumstance. And if he was caught with it, all he needed to say was it was his personal phone and he wouldn't get in any trouble whatsoever. While with tobacco products, you could justify that you're not really hurting anybody, it's just tobacco. Cell phones are absolutely a commodity to the gangs in prison. They're used to get away with any number of criminal activities that they might otherwise get caught for. And I think I'll have to do a whole video at some point about the clever things that inmates use cell phones for. You see, these officers started by committing what they considered to be small rules infractions, just a little bit of tobacco, just a cell phone, and it's even understandable how they could start that pattern of behavior because the profits were so substantial. But nobody stops after just one time. It's the same thing as the career criminals and the drug addicts all say, I'll just do it once, I'll just do it a couple of times, I'll just do it every time I have the chance. If you are confronted with a situation where all you have to do is compromise your morals, take the easy way out, don't focus on the profit, don't focus on the easy money or the quick high or whatever it is. Instead, focus on the long-term consequences if that one time becomes a pattern of behavior. Because it's in our nature. We always look for the easy way out. And the easy way out is rarely the best way forward.